Greetings, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome everyone to the third and final day of the Ctcn 19th Advisory Board meeting. And we have made some minor modifications to the agenda for today to reflect that agenda item 11 has been carried over to our meeting today. And we hope this is agreeable to everyone. And without further delay, I'd like to invite Mr. Gareth Gorst, who represents the UK COP Presidency, to provide remarks to the Advisory Board. Gareth, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to check, can colleagues hear me okay?
We can hear you very well. Thanks.
Thank you very much for confirming, Moa. Great to see everyone, and great to see everyone in person. I'm so sorry that I can't be out there in Copenhagen with you. I trust that colleagues are having a wonderful time. It's a really beautiful city. And as Madam Chair said, my thanks also to colleagues for your understanding in adjusting the agenda to accommodate me today rather than yesterday. I must confess to not feeling my best. COVID is making its way through the Gorst household, so please bear with me whilst I say just a few words, and thank you again for your understanding. But allow me to begin, I think, by just saying that I felt Rose did the most excellent job yesterday in providing attendees with an overview of what COP26 and the Glasgow Climate Pact means for the Ctcn and the technology mechanism at large. I thought this was an excellent comprehensive overview of the implications of such a pact agenda, so I won't repeat this. Instead, I'd like to take the time to offer some perhaps more personal reflections on COP26 and the year ahead as the Presidency team's negotiator for technology development and transfer. And once again, great to see some familiar faces. It feels a long time since Glasgow. So I think beginning with, from my perspective, I was overawed by the cooperative spirit and the appetite, I think, in which colleagues approached the COP26 negotiations on technology. Negotiators tackled an unprecedented number of agenda items and achieved some excellent outcomes, in my view, that I hope will improve the functioning of the technology mechanism. And all of this with the collective view to keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. So a tremendous achievement from negotiators all round. And I must pay credit to the Ctcn Secretariat, the government of Denmark, and my partners, the COP25 Chilean presidency, for co-convening the Ctcn donor roundtable alongside ourselves. It was great seeing new announcements being committed and brought forward for the Ctcn, as well as to hear some of the previous and recent commitments underscored by colleagues. I think, there is tremendous appetite out there for supporting the Ctcn. So I thought this was a really great event to galvanise that support and bring colleagues together. And I hope that we might be able to repeat this at COP27 and beyond. So I also wanted to pick up that we heard repeated calls for the Ctcn to broaden its outreach beyond donor countries, something that I understand we've heard for a number of years now, and to broaden that out to both include the public and the private sector. You have seen that the UK successfully partnered several private sector organisations and sponsors to deliver COP26 in Glasgow, and continues to partner many of these organisations from the private sector in the year ahead. And I would just like to offer that I'd be most happy to explore the possibilities for helping connect the Ctcn with some of those that have shown the UK government their generosity and support over the last year, well, the last 2 years, I should say, and especially with those organisations focused on technology. At a personal level, I was also really pleased to see parties' decision to grant seats at the table to representatives from Youngo, WGC and IPO. I know many colleagues cited this in discussions yesterday, but just to see the inclusion of their voices as part of the compositional changes to the advisory board, I think just reflecting that increased inclusion and representation, especially from such key constituencies, is of benefit to us all, and I'm sure it will benefit the work of the Ctcn. Now, like you, I am excited to meet my Egyptian counterpart when they're appointed, and look forward to helping them bring them up to speed on the outcomes of COP26 in relation to technology. I was incredibly fortunate to have benefited from the generosity and wisdom of our good friend from the COP25 Chilean presidency team, Ambrosio, in the run-up to COP26. And I hope to show some of that kindness and support to help support the incoming Egyptian presidency. And I've no doubt that colleagues will show them the same warm welcome that you afforded to me in the approach to COP26, having started this role fairly shortly before COP26, I might add. And whilst I cannot speak for the priorities of the incoming presidency team and their plans for COP27, I've been encouraged by the emphasis that ministers, officials, negotiators have placed on the importance of technology in the interventions that I have bore witness to. And in terms of the year ahead for myself and the presidency team, the UK is committed to driving forward the Glasgow Breakthroughs agenda. So this agenda will see countries and businesses coordinate and strengthen their climate action each year to dramatically scale up and speed up the development and deployment of clean technologies to drive down costs in the next decade. So to 2030 is the benchmark. The overarching aim is to make clean technologies the most affordable, accessible and attractive choice across 5 different sectors: power, road transport, steel, hydrogen and agriculture, particularly supporting the developing world to access the innovation and tools needed to transition to net zero. Now, this will be ringing true, I think, to many colleagues present. There are clear parallels here to the work of the Ctcn and the different sectors in which the Ctcn projects are focused on. I know that some of you will have viewed it as perhaps a missed opportunity not to have explored or defined a role for the Ctcn within, or I should say, the technology mechanism, perhaps within the breakthrough agenda when it was announced at COP26. So responding to this feedback, I wanted to note that I've taken forward some initial conversations with colleagues to work out if the expertise and experience of the technology mechanism can be harnessed and brought into the process. Like I said, very early conversations, very early stages, but I would hope to be able to report back to the Ctcn Secretariat and colleagues in the technology mechanism more broadly on progress on these talks over the coming months. But finally, allow me to close by once again thanking you for having me and for your understanding in accommodating me and shifting the agenda. This is much appreciated. And if the chair and vice chair will allow, because I believe we have a few minutes and I only wanted to make a brief intervention, I would really love the opportunity to open the floor to hear the thoughts of colleagues on the line, present in the room there in Copenhagen, on what more they feel the UK presidency can do to support the technology mechanism, and specifically the Ctcn in the year ahead. Moa, I will pause there. Thank you ever so much for having me, and once again, great to see you.
Thank you so much, Garrett, for joining us, and we really hope that you feel better soon. And thank you for this update and also for updating us about the Glasgow Breakthrough Agenda. So we will now open the floor for AB members for any comments and questions. So please raise your flag or raise your hand or indicate in the chat if you would like to take the floor. And I first give the floor to Mr. Irvin Rose from the United States. Irvin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Garrett, for your excellent presentation. And I want to personally thank you for all the support that you've provided to me and the Ctcn as a whole throughout this process in your role on behalf of the presidency. I think it's been very important and very helpful. We saw an incredible presentation from Rose. Excuse me. Sorry, I was just finishing my breakfast right before the meeting. We saw a tremendous presentation from Rose about how active the Ctcn is already. And the mandate is so broad, there's an almost unlimited set of new directions we could go, partnerships that we could strengthen, stakeholders that we could expand our work with. And it's easy to sort of, put more words on paper to encourage more collaboration with every partnership in the world. But ultimately, in the negotiations, the resources aren't always taken into account, and so we get some very broad mandates. Here at the advisory board level, I think we really need to take the available resources into account. And while we all would like to see us generating more resources, we have to be strategic about how we make that happen. And I am emphasizing, hopefully not quite ad nauseum, the need that I see to focus more, to have a more cumulus impact and a more clear identity for what the CTCN really specializes in and where we can have the most impact, rather than pretending that we can do everything. And I appreciate, but ultimately, of course, our most important role is our status within the UNFCCC and Paris process. That's an obvious starting point. And so I think the relationship with the presidency is really critical. And I appreciate what I would say is your unusual candor in saying that in some ways the Glasgow breakthroughs were a little bit of a missed opportunity for us, in terms of, these were some of the big announcements in Glasgow, and the CTCN was not really envisioned, at the core of those initiatives. But now I also appreciate, your work in finding ways for the CTCN to support the implementation of the work that was launched in Glasgow under those initiatives. And so I just want to flag that and appreciate that, and say that, we can come up with a long list of initiatives to deepen our work with, but I think, as a UNFCCC body, we should be paying special attention to the sort of UNFCCC-wide initiatives, and the presidency plays an important role in that. So I definitely want to just endorse your suggestion that we continue to work with the UK presidency in support of the Glasgow initiatives, and also your forward-looking suggestion that we be more proactive this time around in working with the Egyptian presidency, and you in the run-up to Sharm el-Sheikh, so that we can, not just have good side events of our own in Sharm el-Sheikh, but really explore the potential that the CTCN will fit into the Sharm el-Sheikh agenda, and so that, as appropriate, the CTCN and the tech, I hope, will be a central element of any new technology-oriented initiatives that might be launched in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Thank you very much for that. And we now have on the speaker list Nicolas and Omedi. So Nicolas Gallardec from European Commission, please.
Thank you very much, Moa, and thank you, Garrett, for your words, and so all the best for your recovery. Just really wanted to support what Erwin just said on the importance of taking into account as much as we can this big achievements of COP27, and make sure that here at the AB, also with our colleagues at Tech, make sure that we can transcribe into actually proper words and beyond general guidance, the work that we should be undertaking for the next few years. Also, I think there's a timing issue. I think it is great that we have a year ahead of us to work on that, and COP27 will hopefully, with your support, Garrett, and also future engagement with COP27 colleagues, presidency, make sure that we will, like this, by then be able to specify a bit more what we want to do for the technology mechanism overall, and in particular as well with the Ctcn and the tech, and hopefully then this will be a stepping stone for more specified action, more specified action for climate mitigation and adaptation. But yeah, I think the few months ahead, based on the general guidance of COP, is going to be very important and key for us, in particular the CTCN AB, to narrow down what we want to do, to specify more, and to turn general guidance into most precise action. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Ann Barr from Women and Gender Constituency, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Moa. And hello, Gareth, and thank you very much for your speech. Good to see you on the screen. You can't make it, and I hope you will recover soon. I want to first thank the COP presidency, the UK COP presidency specifically, for supporting the inclusion of our three constituencies in the advisory board of the CTCN. All the negotiation was a long but very good and effective process, and we are very thankful to the support of the COP presidency at that time. Regarding, as you are asking for our advice and comments on how the UK COP presidency can support the work of the technology mechanism towards COP27. I think we are all looking forward to support from the UK COP presidency on a mobilization for the adoption of our new program of work, and we all hope that this program of work will promote inclusive technology transfer and development, taking into consideration the inclusion of our constituency in the work of the board. And also yesterday, Rose presented a submission made by the Ctcn in sharing experience on how the Ctcn works as a process, and the technology mechanism actually works as a process to share experience on how that could help for a loss and damage facility or similar process. And maybe the UK COP presidency could help bringing visibility to that submission and promote discussions around this, as I'm sure this is a very valuable submission and proposal made by the Ctcn. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we now have a few more speakers, and I would like to encourage colleagues to make brief interventions in the interest of time. So we have Fred, Ping, Ambrosio, and Orly. So first, Mr. Fred Onduri from Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. And I would like to join others in commending Gareth for the work he has done pre-COP and then during the COP and now post-COP. I think on the behalf of the very well with us in technology, and I really thank him for his efforts. Now, my request, in particular to Gareth and the UK government, is not to let their support that they have given to the technology negotiations and discussions just disappear. I would like to request them to consider championing the support, promotion, and of indigenous technology, which from our discussion yesterday, we observed that is lagging behind. So in particular, I request that if the British government, through Gareth, can consider at least championing the support, promotion, and development of the indigenous technology, I think they will leave a mark there and it will be their baby. That is my particular request to Gareth. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now Mr. Ping Chong from China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also I will join colleagues in commending Gareth and the COP26 presidency for all the work has been done in facilitating the process on technology development and transfer. And also I think the proposal and information provided by Gareth, I think it's very interesting. And I think considering the current situation of the Ctcn and also the help provided by the COP26 presidency during the COP26 by facilitating the roundtable on the fundraising and other, I think it's worthwhile to build out more synergies between Ctcn and other initiatives focusing on technology innovation, addressing climate change issues. So I think the more the linkage, the more potential resource can be drawn to the Ctcn, to the technology mechanism. I think those are all good efforts need to strengthen. For that, I thank the COP presidency. And also regarding the continuation, the COP26 presidency and also the Egyptian presidency, the transfer and the continuation of the process, I think, I believe with your facilitation, the transition will be smooth, and we're looking for a good process we will have in Egypt this year. And also, since we will have the COP in Africa, and Africa is a continent facing negative impacts by the climate change. So a lot of strengths in UK, the early warning system, the forecasts on the natural disasters. I think all those type of support or technology can be shared with the African continent, and I'm looking forward to more work on that particular area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ambrosio Joblano from Chile.
Thank you very much, Ma. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you.
Yes. Thank you. I would like to join my colleagues in congratulating the leadership shown by UK Presidency, but also by you personally, Gareth, in elevating technology matters inside the process, and also the leadership shown that allowed us last year to have mandates that are relevant for both the tech and the Ctcn. I'm going to speak strictly as tech chair, so because there's so many things that could be said, but I will focus on specifically the leader-led targets on the Glasgow breakthrough and the role it can have with the tech. If we look at the 5 sectors selected, the tech actually had a paper on energy released recently, and we were discussing last week a paper on sustainable road transport. So we have, in both of those, touch upon hydrogen production. So in the current pipeline of work, we have already touching upon 3 of these sectors. There was a discussion where that we need to decide if we are going to pursue this work in agriculture with other relevant partnerships, and maybe still seems to be missing in the near-term agenda so far, or at least no near-term discussions. So on one side, this collaboration with the co-presidency could be to take into account what we have and the gaps regarding these goals and the breakthroughs, but also on your side, having feedback on these papers from your side and using them as a diffusion tool for policymakers around the world, so the impact of the tech is increased. I think is a healthy relationship that the tech can build with the COP26 presidency in using the Glasgow breakthrough as an agenda of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Orly Jacob from Canada.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Gareth, thank you very much for your presentation. I would also like to thank you and the presidency for your efforts leading up to COP26, and in particular, your motivation to thoroughly understand the challenges faced by the technology mechanism. I would also like to support previous colleagues who previously spoke on more focused action for the technology mechanism and the importance of knowing where we can be most effective going forward and therefore have the most impact. One specific area I would like to recommend to the presidency is, given the presidency's profile and relationships with climate organizations, both public and private, I would like to suggest that you work with us to identify and better articulate the technology mechanism's value added as being a body of the convention and our particular position within the convention, and help communicate that to all these other organizations who may not fully grasp what the technology can do in supporting them and the technology mechanism can do in supporting them and building on their work. So given our unique position, what is it that we can offer in support to these other organizations, or how can they support our work? So I think the presidency is in a very unique position to help us with this kind of communication and relationship building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I will give final word to Matthew Kennedy from Ringo, and then Omedi Moses Jura from Kenya. So Matt, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And yes, I would just like to echo the comments made from previous speakers in terms of the performance of the presidency at the last COP. My main point really is to highlight the importance of non-state actors as well within this discussion. I note that the work programme for the Marrakesh Partnership on Global Action has just been published on the UNFCCC website. And of course, the COP has progressed non-state actors in a way that it had not previously done before. And I think this is really important when you consider certainly the constituencies around this table here, be it indigenous groups, be it research, business, environmental NGOs, the youth constituency. These are all active constituents now. And I know the Marrakesh Partnership is forwarding that. And I would like to just commend the efforts of the Presidency in positioning the important role of non-state actors in terms of the climate negotiations, but also hope that it continues for the forthcoming COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Omedi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Moa, and good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Gareth, and it's good to see you again. I'll be very brief in the interest of time. I almost withdrew, but I said I must at least thank you, and of course the Chilean presidency as well, because we know how the way to Glasgow was for us, quite rough and very unpredictable, especially in technology, but because of the good leadership. I would say that this is where we had the most actionable decisions that we've ever had. More than 50 actionable, and we just don't want to stop there. Our request is that we go through with the actions that are required in the right way, because from a developing country perspectives, what we need are solutions. And we also appreciate very much the leadership in the fundraising or the special event that we had. May it not stop there. I had a very good statement from one of our colleagues talking about championing. Yes. And this is where I think you can come in very handy. And if the UK could assure the Ctcn every year of a certain amount of, because you understand this so well and you took it up so well and led the process quite well, that we have whatever it is, however small, but that every year the US can give some financial support that is predictable. The UK, that we have it as a first step for others to also look at. I think with everybody putting in such a thing, we can be sure of what we have been singing throughout, predictable financing. If we try that for the next 5 years, for example, I think that you would be championing something as the UK presidency. Kindly, that is the challenge I would give, because you opened it up for us to tell you what more the UK could do. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for these comments and questions. And Garrett, I will give you the floor again for some brief final remarks, and then we will proceed with our agenda. So, Garrett, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will keep it just that. I will keep it brief, and I think it's, so first of all, I already feel better. Thank you so much for all the kind words. It's a real boost, and thank you for such positive reflections on the leadership shown by myself and the UK, but also underscoring the need that has to continue. And I want to reassure colleagues that I'm here to stay. This motivation is here to stay, and the energy is here to stay. So I look forward to partnering you all in the year ahead. Now, if it's okay, Madam Chair, I won't pick up on specific issues, because I don't think there was any questions within there. There was just really excellent, fruitful suggestions, which I think are incumbent on me to take away and perhaps respond to, in due course, really. I think there is some tangible actions there, and I feel things that I want to challenge myself to take away and go and work on. But just allow me to sort of respond very briefly to Mr. Kennedy's remarks. Just say not forgetting non-state actors. I think when I talk about public private sector organizations, I want that to include non-state actors, so forgive me for not having mentioned that sooner. But allow me just to close there really, and I think to thank you all for such excellent suggestions that I think are really quite actionable. So I look forward to reporting back and working with you all in the year ahead, and yeah, thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much again, Gareth. And colleagues, let us now move on to agenda item number 14, matters relating to the technology mechanism. And as you know, parties agreed in 2018 at CMA 1 on the scope and modalities for the first periodic assessment of the effectiveness and adequacy of support provided to the technology mechanism. And CMA 3 initiated the first periodic assessment with a view to completing it at its fourth session in November 2022. Parties requested the UNFCCC Secretariat to prepare an interim report on this matter for consideration by SBI at its 56th session in June 2022. And here we would like to kindly invite Mr. Barvert van der Plas to provide a summary of progress on the statement. So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Moa. I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Moa. Yeah, I will give a brief update of where we stand with the very first periodic assessment of the technology mechanism. As you said, indeed, in Glasgow, the Secretariat was mandated to prepare an interim report on the assessment for consideration by parties at the upcoming SBI. What I will do is I will give you some background and a little bit of an overview of the process, and then I will end with the next steps which are foreseen for the next months. First of all, a little bit of background. I think Moa already referred to at least the CMA decision referring to the adoption of the scope and the modalities in Katowice. But one step backwards, the original mandate came indeed from Paris in the accompanying decision, where indeed in the decision it was referred that the COP is to undertake a periodic assessment of the effectiveness and the adequacy of support provided to the technology mechanism in supporting the implementation of the Paris Agreement on matters related to technology development transfer. So that's where the original mandate came from. And at that session also the COP invited or requested the SBI to elaborate the scope and the modalities for undertaking this periodic assessment. So starting in Paris, parties have been working for 3 years, in fact, in elaborating the scope and the modalities for undertaking this periodic assessment. And so these scope and modalities were adopted in Katowice. And in fact, they are very, very detailed. It kind of lays out all the elements which should be taken into account in assessing the effectiveness of the technology mechanism, but also the adequacy of support provided to the technology mechanism. Just in contrast, for example, to the Ctcn review, which we undertook last year, which had very little guidance in terms of how to undertake the Ctcn review. On the contrary, the periodic assessment, it's very well elaborated in terms of all the elements which should be taken into account in undertaking the assessment. And like you already referred to, the process was initiated at CMA 3 in Glasgow. basically to kick off the assessment, and there was indeed a request to the Secretariat to prepare an interim report with interim findings for consideration by parties at the upcoming SBI in June 2022. So that's a little bit of a background in a nutshell. Moving on a little bit more in detail in terms of what are the objectives and the various important parameters which should be taken into account in undertaking this assessment. If you look at the CMA decision, it spells out very much the core elements of the assessment, and it should focus indeed on two main issues. Like one is the effectiveness of the technology mechanism in supporting the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So looking both at the TEC and the CTC and how effective they have been in supporting the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And secondly, on the support side, to what extent the TEC and the CTCN have been adequately supported to undertake their work in supporting the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So these are the kind of the broad elements of the scope. If you look at the decision which was agreed by parties in Katowice, the outcomes very much feed into recommendations for updating the technology framework. So there's a clear link between the outcomes of this assessment and updating the technology framework, which was agreed in Katowice. So there's a clear link between these two processes. In terms of reporting, we as a secretariat, we have been invited to prepare an interim report for consideration by parties in June. And following the consideration by parties, there will be a final report, including all the findings and also the recommendations, which will be then considered by parties in Sharm el-Sheikh at SBI 57. Moving on to the important parameters, which are kind of the basis for undertaking the assessment. In terms of time, like this assessment is very much in the context of the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So the starting date from which we look at all the information which we're going to consider is the moment when the Paris Agreement entered into force in 2016. So that's the starting point for collecting all the information and processing and analyzing it. In terms of scale, we look at various levels indeed, at the global level, regional level, and country-specific level, to see indeed to what extent the outputs and the outcomes of the work of the TEC and CTCN have generated impact at the various levels, including at the national level. In terms of scope, this is very much in line with elements which are in the CMA decision, so I won't go into detail there, but the intention is to cover all the elements which are included in the decision, the CMA decision as agreed in Katowice. So these are important elements to take into account for the assessment. Moving on to the process. We have broken down the whole process basically into three stages, starting with the Inception Phase, which was initiated directly after the COP in Glasgow, trying to kind of shape and frame the assessment, having initial interviews with relevant stakeholders as the basis for preparing the evaluation grids. And the evaluation grids is very much at the core of this exercise. It tries to operationalize all the elements which are included in the scope through evaluation questions and indicators, and also the data sources for quantifying all these indicators. So that is very much at the core of the methodology, these evaluation grids, and that took quite some time to fine-tune and to agree on them among us. And these were also shared during a kickoff meeting. That was basically finalizing the Inception Phase. We had a kickoff meeting together with relevant stakeholders from UNEP, UNIDO, and the CTCN to share the methodology, the objectives of the assessment, and also seek feedback in terms of data availability, because that's an important element. To what extent all the data is available to quantify the indicators which are part of the methodology. So that kickoff meeting took place early February. And currently we are in the second phase, which is very much I would say, most resource intensive part of the exercise, collecting data, processing the data, and analyzing the data. And there we draw upon a number of information sources. Most of it is, of course, literature, all the documents which have been developed by the TEC and the Ctcn. That's an important source of information. But we also rely on other sources of information, including interviews and a number of surveys addressed to the TEC Ctcn members and observers, but also to NDEs. One of them was already issued quite recently to the Ctcn AB members, observers, and the TEC. I hope you had a chance to respond to the survey, because it's an opportunity to be engaged in this whole assessment. And that's important because it should be open and transparent in accordance with what parties agreed in Katowice. So on top of that, we also intend to include a number of country case studies to kind of exemplify the impact the work of the TEC and the Ctcn make at the country level. So we have selected 3 countries across the 3 regions according to certain criteria. And this also will be part of the assessment. Like I said, this is still work in progress. We intend to finalize these states mid of April, and then start drafting the actual interim report in order to make it available in a timely manner to parties for consideration at the upcoming SBs. What we do expect at SBs, of course, we will share the findings, but we also look forward to receive additional guidance from parties regarding the last states in relation to drawing recommendations in relation to enhancing the effectiveness of the technology mechanism. And the second element, the adequacy of support provided to the technology mechanism. And last but not least, in relation to updating the framework. So that's in a nutshell the whole process and where we currently stand. Like I said, we are very much in the middle of the data collection and analysis stage. Moving on to the last slide, it's a bit forward-looking, like what's next. We are at the moment finalizing the data collection and the analysis stage. We recently also issued the NDE survey. Probably you remember 2 years ago, together with the Ctcn, we issued the very first NDE survey. And it was in the context of the M&E framework of both the TEC and the Ctcn. And as part of that M&E framework, it was also agreed to repeat this NDE survey every 2 years. And so recently we issued that NDE survey. And of course, that will generate a lot of very useful information, which we can draw upon in the context of the very first periodic assessment. So I would encourage all of you, at least the NDEs among you, to reserve some time and indeed try to respond to the NDE survey, because, like I said, it's an important source of information for the assessment. Last but not least, like I said before, this will all feed into the preparation of the interim report, which is up for parties' consideration at the upcoming SBI in June 2022. And with that, I would like to close this or finalize this presentation. Like I said, it's a very brief presentation, giving you a sense of where we stand in the process without going into detail in terms of the methodology. And with that, maybe it's good to hand over back to you, Noah.
Thank you very much, Bert, for this update. And colleagues, we would now like to open the floor if there are some brief comments or questions on this presentation. Please indicate, raise your flag or raise your hand if you would like to make a brief comment. Seeing no requests for the floor, thank you again. Oh, Mr. Ichiro Sato from Japan, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have one just small comment. I think it will be very challenging to do a very scientific quantitative analysis because of the nature of the assessment. So as you mentioned, I think it's a good idea to use a lot of example to highlight the point you make in the result of assessment. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Fred Onduri, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to really thank the UNFCCC Secretariat for initiating this process because we believe this process will help in improving support for the technology mechanism and will also help in improving the productivity and efficiency of the technology mechanism. Therefore, we thank the Secretariat and we thank Bert for making this brief presentation. At least he has given us a picture that what we decided is being undertaken. Now, my also request to the members of the advisory board is that at least this initiative came from our discussions and negotiations. Our inputs and comments are very crucial in shaping out the outcome of this assessment. So I request all members to consider making at least their inputs to this process so that at the end of the day, we own it and we use it to progress in our discussions and delivering the technologies that are needed by the developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we will take final comments from Ping and Ambrosio. So Ping, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also thanks to the UNFCCC Secretary for the brief on the current progress regarding the first periodic assessment. So my question is, I see there's some targeted data collecting exercise, including surveys and interviews. I'm wondering regarding those surveys, so what is the current response rate? And for which kind of targeted interviews or surveys are not sufficient at the moment? So you are just mentioning you encourage the NDEs to be more active. So for others, for the advisory board members and tech members, so are the data collected already sufficient enough, or what kind of status upon your current assessment? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ambrosio, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ma. My question is, how in this process the contribution of the tech is being measured? If there are specific components regarding the tech aspect on this exercise? Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I will now hand back to Bert if you would like to address some of these questions or comments. So Bert, please.
Yes, thank you, Moa. First, the comment of Ping regarding the response rate on the two surveys I was referring to. Like one is still ongoing, so it's difficult to give the exact number. The NDE survey is still ongoing. But for the other one, that one is closed already. That one was closed last week. So there we have some insights in terms of the response rate, and the number we have, it's close to 40%. Close to 40%. Of course, we would have hoped to have a higher response rate, but it's in line with previous surveys, which we organized in the context of the Ctcn review. So we are not surprised by the number. It's very much in line with response rates for previous surveys, and it provides a good basis for at least analyzing the responses and apply them for the purpose of this assessment. On the question of Ambrosio in relation to how the contribution of the tech in the context of this assessment will be measured, that's all in line with what was agreed in Katowice, because the scope applies to both to the tech and the Ctcn in terms of their effectiveness. So we won't only look at the work of the Ctcn, but also look at the work of the tech. Of course, it's a little bit more challenging to measure the impact of the work of the tech. For Ctcn, that's less of a challenge. But in relation to for example, the adequacy support, also there it's a little bit more challenging in relation as compared to the Ctcn, because you know very well the Ctcn advisory board every year approves a budget and also the financial statement. So that information is basically already out there. Well, for the tech, we follow a different process. Like every 2 years, we submit a budget proposal to parties for their approval, and support to the work of the tech is kind of factored into the budget. And so it's a little bit more challenging to clearly pinpoint the budget which is available for supporting the work of the tech. But we will try our best and come up with relevant information for parties' considerations. So that's in response to questions. Over to you, Moa.
Thank you very much. And I now see a final comment from Stephen. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And very briefly, I just want to reflect on the 40% response rate. I really do think that it is important that colleagues take the time to respond to these surveys. From memory, this one didn't take any longer than 10 or 15 minutes. And I really do think it is important that everybody, obviously I'm not speaking specifically to AB members, but everybody who is addressed by these invitations makes every effort to respond so that we can have the most credible and robust possible process and assist the secretariats in their work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you again to Bert for this update. And we're looking forward to the interim report ahead of the SB session in June. So with that, we would like to move on to the next agenda item. And I'm handing over to Omedi.
Thank you, Moa. I would now like to draw your attention to agenda item 15, and here invite the Ctcn Secretariat to present an update on the development of the Ctcn's 5-year program of work, taking into consideration the outcomes of the discussion on the proposed joint Tech Ctcn work program during the joint session on Monday. So here I would like to invite Director Ctcn Rose. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Medi. I have requested my colleague Karina to make the presentation on the process we've developed. So if you would please allow Karina to make the presentation. Karina, please.
Sure, thank you, Rose. If you could move to the next slide, please. We wanted to provide a bit of an overview. Some of this will be a brief repetition from our last task force meeting on the topic, but seeing as we also have so many new members, we wanted to make the information available. And just to provide a bit of background on our program of work, this document, as you've heard throughout our discussions over the last few days, is really designed to be a strategic guiding document for the Ctcn, covering the period of 2023 to 2027, as our current program of work comes to an end this year. And In developing or planning for this new program of work, the Ctcn was very keen to align the planning with resource mobilization efforts that would then fund the work going forward for the next few years. And so we have a second objective in this work, which is to develop both a partnership and resource mobilization strategy that complements the POW. Next slide, please. Might be a bit difficult to read the small writing there, but this is essentially the timeline for this year in terms of our planning. And some of these activities have already taken place. But essentially, you can see that our aim is to have a final draft ready for your review by the time of our next advisory board meeting, if possible. And we have a number of milestones along the way, which we have already begun to undertake. Next slide. So one of these key items is to hire 2 consultants to assist us in this process. The first would be a climate policy advisor to really help us to draft the document. And the second is a consultant who could advise on the resource mobilization strategy. The idea is that this person will be hired to work through the end of, or these people will be hired to work through the end of the year. And we have now received the applications for both of the positions, and we'll be reviewing and evaluating and ultimately selecting the 2 candidates by the end of April. And so looking at the various roles that are involved in this work, the Ctcn is the main organizer of this process, and we will guide the work of the 2 consultants and also provide a lot of input into the work and designing some of the consultation questions and those who the specialists should be reaching out to. The consultants' roles, of course, are to then take the guidance that we provide and to engage with a number of important stakeholders in order to be able to draft both a program of work and a complementary resource mobilization strategy. The advisory board members play a very important role in this process. Already, you've provided us guidance during these meetings, but also in previous task force discussions. And we will be asking you also to take part in either individual or group consultations where we'll dig a little bit deeper into some of the priorities that you may have. And of course, we'll be asking you to review various draft forms of this, the POW and the resource mobilization strategy, and ultimately to review the final version and to approve it. As you'll recall, on Monday during our joint tech and Ctcn session, we discussed the COP's guidance regarding further integration of the work plans and programs of work of both the tech and the Ctcn. We had a presentation on a number of proposed joint activities that have been discussed during the joint task force, as well as some of the modalities for this work or the formats. So for among some of these are that I think there's a strong consensus that we want to create a structure that allows for joint activities under defined program areas, but also for separate work where each entity has a specialization. And in terms of the incorporating this in our programs of work, it can either be put into throughout our planning documents or considered as a chapter in either of the 2 documents. And so the Joint Tech and Ctcn Task Force will, I think, continue to work on this intercessionally to finalize both the activities to be undertaken and also the modalities. So we'll be following that process for the guidance. And I think just to say that we've already received a lot of very substantive guidance over these discussions in the last few days, which we will already be incorporating starting tomorrow and going forward. And some of these focus on the discussions that we've had on really trying to drill into more specific areas of engagement for the future of the Ctcn, such as looking at or focusing on specific sectors or subsectors, or specific types of assistance. So we've talked about, for example, capacity building for public institutions. So we'll be noting all of these comments and finalizing the consultant contracts, as I mentioned earlier. We are working on the development of the questions that we'll utilize in the consultations, and as well as a list of those to be consulted. And this list is quite broad. Among these, first and foremost, are the advisory board, but also our organizations and other key stakeholders and thought leaders. And then organizing our next task force meeting on this ongoing work. So we'll continue to keep you updated as we progress in this regard, and happy to take any comments and questions that you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina, for that presentation. And now I open the floor if you have any questions to Karina. Or to the entire secretariat. I see Fred. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Let me thank Karina for this presentation. I just request for one clarification. This is a very important process coming up with the work program of the Ctcn, and also looking at the joint areas which can be handled by both the two organs of the technology mechanism. We have also got an assignment to come up with a joint work program. How does this process here fit in that one? Because from the discussion we had earlier, members were of the view that we should fast track the process of coming up with a joint work program, and maybe have some draft to present to the COP during the next COP meeting. So how does this process fit into the other one, complement or supplement whatever form, so that we know exactly that this program is matching with what you're already undertaking? Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. And now, Erin. Oh, is that so? We had Ping? Okay. Kindly, sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair. I have actually two questions. First of all, thanks to the Ctcn Secretary team for this briefing on the preparation, the plan on the program of work. So my first question is related with the first periodic assessment of the technology mechanism. So if there's any like flexibility or possibility next year in the Ctcn AB 21 to have a opportunity to revisit this program of work to reflect the outcome of the first periodic assessment. So that's my first question. Will that flexibility be considered? And secondly, I heard from the briefing is to keep an open mind regarding the final format of this final draft of the program of work this September, to considering the relationship between the joint Ctcn and tech program of work, how to incorporate that into this just a single one, overarching one, or just link it as a chapter. So I'm wondering, from the Secretary's perspective, would the time allow to have a overarching document for both tech and Ctcn by September? Because to me, I see from this timeline of development is really, really difficult to meet that time target. Thank you.
Thank you, Ping. We have a comment from Mr. Lee of Korea. I want to request Clarine to assist me read it out.
From Mr. Lee, AB member from the Republic of Korea. First, I hope that the third program of work in resource mobilization and partnership strategy clearly suggests the long-term financing strategy of the Secretariat, as well as feasible measures to improve the funding stability of the CTCN. Second, I would like to request that the CTCN's 5-year program of work indicate 4 key areas, such as enhancing cooperation between the CTCN and GCF, capacity building of the developing countries in the Asia-Pacific region, facilitating cooperation, RD&D project support, providing technical support to developing countries, including voluntary support. These key areas are also linked to the key functions of the CTCN Partnership and Liaison Office in Songdo. Third, I want to suggest that the third program of work and resource mobilization and partnership strategy specify measures for strengthening the linkages between the technology and finance mechanism, inter alia by utilizing the CTCN Partnership and Liaison Office in Songdo, which will enable more efficient cooperation and communication with the GCF. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clarine, for reading that out for us. I hope you've taken note of it. I have 2 more speakers, and I'll close the list there. We have Erin and then Pedro.
Thank you, Chair. I support the approach presented by the Secretariat as the basis for moving forward on the development of the program of work, and that would also include the outcomes of our joint Tech CTCN session, in which we also discussed work on the program and the joint program. And I understand some of the concerns that members have about how far we can go on the joint program, and also the timing. And I also understand concerns about just the mechanics of how difficult it might be to agree on a joint program. It's difficult enough to agree on the separate programs. So these are all real concerns. And I also understand that, at least when I have emphasized, I think the need to have both the TEC and the CTCN try to have a more clear, consistent focus. I understand the sort of tension and the difficulty in making those decisions, and also concern about sticking to the technology framework. So I want to address a few of those points. So the way I envision this is that we have a 3-track approach, that the tech and CTCN will still be pursuing a process to develop their own separate work programs, so that we won't get sort of stuck in a situation that in the fall somehow we're unable to have both bodies agree on one common document. You can imagine, I forget which order it is, but you can imagine the tech meets, agrees to maybe a joint program, but then the CTCN meets separately and wants to make some changes, and maybe we can't all agree on a completely unified document, even though that would be my ideal. So I think to kind of play it safe and respect the differences of opinion we have, and the fact that there are different structures and different organizations, we still are pursuing 2 separate work programs. At the same time, we have the joint task force that's already in existence that will see how far we can go in following the COP's mandate to explore a joint program. That's not a brand new idea, and we have already a history of having developed these joint activities over the last 2 years. So now it's just a matter of how much farther can we go in expanding the level of collaboration between the 2 bodies, so it's not this relatively discrete set of ad hoc activities, but ideally it's a few sort of substantial programs where both the tech and CTCN are moving together, addressing the same issues and seeking the same objectives. And then ultimately, in terms of like the product, if we think about the joint annual report, we have already a good history of managing to agree on one joint annual report that we present to the parties. And as Fred, I think, pointed out originally very clearly in Glasgow, when you open up the cover page and actually look at the table of contents, you see it's mostly 2 separate reports. But there is a joint chapter, and we have successfully negotiated that joint chapter in a way that it all comes together in time for the COP. So if we think about that way, we're going to have, my ideal would be at least present separate joint work programs together under one cover page. I think that simple, structural change would help us all see where we're working together, where we're working separately, and for stakeholders to present it all in one document, including for parties. I think it'd be very helpful to have a technology mechanism work program document of some kind that may actually have two separate documents, but let everyone see what the two bodies are doing side by side, no matter how much we diverge or come together. But in the process, I'm confident we'll be able to develop essentially like a robust joint chapter, if you think of it that way, in the work program that does show how we're able to work together. And I think we have to still think in terms of the technology framework, right? I mean, that's what we all agree on. And so I know people are going to want to be able to see how we're addressing each of the 5 themes. I mean, there are 5 principles in the framework, and there are 5 themes. And the work programs today are structured very much around those 5 different themes especially. So for starters, I think everyone will feel comfortable if the Ctcn and the tech in parallel work through those 5 themes and make sure that we're addressing them. But each body doesn't have to support every theme or every activity in the framework. If we work together, we might see there are some elements of the framework the tech addresses, some elements the Ctcn addresses, and then we don't have to do everything in parallel and separately. And also imagine if the joint annual report was organized in the same way that our work plans are currently organized, by theme of the framework. So let's just put together in the work programs, let's go down the 5 themes, think about how the tech is addressing all 5, how the Ctcn is addressing all 5, and then separately we can think about each other, and in the joint task force, let's see how far we can go in having both bodies work together on complementary activities. Doesn't mean they're always joint activities, but let's have complementary activities together addressing innovation, together addressing each of those 5 themes. And I think we've all seen the potential for that kind of complementary, to have some guidance coming from the tech that is useful for the Ctcn in supporting its technical assistance, and vice versa, building up on that feedback loop that we've all been talking about. And I think in timing, it's interesting if you think about the tech has always emphasized that it has a rolling work plan, the notion that it's up for revision. And we don't use that term with the Ctcn. And we want to have consistency. If we're going to have a 5-year work program, you want that to be meaningful, to build up work over time and not change it every year. And none of us want to renegotiate the work programs every year. But I think just as the tech is a rolling work plan, I think it's legitimate to consider the Ctcn program of work as something of a living document. And I would hope we don't renegotiate it every year. But if there's something really significant coming out of the periodic assessment that makes us reassess the work program, I don't think we should blindly pursue the 5-year work program that we might agree on this fall. I think we should be open to considering changes. Similarly, when new guidance comes out from the parties, in reality, that forces us to change our work. So I think we have to be flexible and treat these as living documents, and we might adjust the Ctcn program of work based on not only the periodic assessment, but guidance from the parties. So that's just my idea about how we can really work together to make sure both bodies are fully addressing the framework, but also finding ways to maximize collaboration. Ideally, I think it wouldn't be that hard to put them together in one document. I also hope that the joint annual report structure could be changed so that we could go down the 5 themes, and under innovation, let's show, whatever the work program was, let's show what the tech did on innovation, what the Ctcn did on innovation together. And we'll already start to see maybe there's more coherence than we understand. And I think that would be also very helpful. I'll stop there. But I hope we can also start talking about, if we agree on having more focus to the Ctcn's technical assistance, what those program areas might be. And I appreciate those who have started to come forward at that level of detail.
Thank you, Erin. Colleagues, we don't have much time, but I still see more hands requesting for the floor, and if you don't mind, we can close the list with Nicholas last. So we have Pedro, we have Tambe, and then Nicholas. Is that okay? Yeah. And Oli, sorry, who came first? We have actually 2 more, Oli and Joseph. Maybe we start with the people online, if possible, kindly. Is that okay? Pedro, you are the one coming next. Can we let them? Yeah, thank you. Oli, you have the floor. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much. Very, very helpful and very informative presentation. Thank you. I'll try to keep this brief as we're running out of time. So I'd just like to open with my thoughts on potential next steps on joint activities, joint work programs. So I would like to support Erwin's suggestion of taking an initial step in this direction. So what I'm hearing from him and what I'm supportive of is taking measured steps. So again, really support the emphasis on each body still continues with its own work, but we look for ways. I think taking these first initial steps will help us identify the ways where alignment makes most sense, and taking some kind of approach that mirrors the way we do things in the JAR makes a lot of sense, because it would help others and ourselves see the synergies and coherency if we have some kind of joint cover. So without repeating everything else he said, I would just like to lend my support to that idea that we could explore more in the joint task force sessions. I also wanted to mention that I hope in the process of working through the program of work that we are able to explore and consider the thematic or key areas as suggested by some already, where the CTCN can have the most impact. And I'm speaking specifically now about the CTCN. And by identifying these areas where we could have the most impact, where we stay within the parameters of the framework and respect the framework. I think this understanding what these key areas are and leveraging these key areas of strength of not only the center, but also of the network specifically, when we know what the strengths of the network are and where we could focus, I think that actually would go a long way to benefit the requesting countries, where we can promote and provide an understanding of where the CTC and the network can provide the most effective and impactful support. Taking a look at the CTCN progress reports, I already see that the CTCN tries to do this by shaping the progress reports in the areas where it's had the most impact and demonstrating the key projects in those areas. One other thing I would like to mention that's related to this is in 2013, the advisory board approved prioritization criteria. And in working on the program of work, I think we may want to keep this prioritization criteria in mind as we move forward. A lot has changed since that was approved. We've built up 10 years of experience, and we may need to integrate what we've learned as a more mature organization to better equip the Secretariat moving forward. So, for example, one major thing that has changed since this prioritization criteria was approved is that this was done before the NDCs were established. So I think this is something that we should think about. Just wanted to flag that it may help us moving forward, especially as we think about the program of work. Perhaps we should think about the prioritization criteria after we move forward with ideas around key areas of work under the program of work. And I believe the program of work discussions will actually really help us in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oli. Now we'll listen to Jesset.
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank Secretariat for this very comprehensive presentation and for taking into account also opinion that has been already appeared during this hour meetings, and some quick remarks. So I'm very happy to see also the deadline for endorsing this program before COP27, so the mechanism, whole mechanism, could show how it implements parties' recommendation for strengthening cooperation. And then I think also that this presentation and this one from the joint session are very good basis for work. And I would like to support this approach for further work. Third, I would like to support US idea on how to organize the work to cope with the aim to have a joint program, the joint chapter, but within respective mandates of two bodies and its specificities and mode of proceedings. And in the end, I also would like to support the kind of prioritization of areas or type of activities to create more impactful concentration of effects of the work of the technology mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Now we come to Pedro. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Amedi. And thank you, Karina, for your excellent presentation. I can see how this idea of focusing on sectors and type of assistance is appealing, but I also think it's very dangerous because the main aim of the technology mechanism is to support and assist countries in their needs, in mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. But the countries are the ones that know what the needs are, and those needs are as diverse as countries are. So to decide on particular sectors or focus is a way to prescribe, it's a way to force countries to do what we think is more important, and not to allow them to decide what is more important. So I think we should keep always in mind that this is a country-driven process, and there are the countries, the ones that are able to decide, and not only able, they have the right to decide which their priorities are. And actually, in one of the virtual meetings that we had before, some people said that the problem is that then we have a widely spread progress. But I don't think that's bad. I think that's actually a good thing, because it means actually one of the priority criteria that we decided in the first tech was inter and intra-regional balance. That means that many countries are being assisted and many different kinds of progress have been made. The fact that they are not easily combined. I mean, I understand that to progress, to measure that progress, we cannot just sum one after the other because they are very different. But that's the nature of the support that we provide. So I think we should really revise this idea of focusing. We may have some priority areas, but we have to keep open to all the needs and the priorities of each one of the countries that are member of the mechanism. Thanks.
Thank you, Pedro. I think we'll take all. There are only two more. We have Tambe and then we have Nicholas. Tambe, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much for the floor. I would like to begin by thanking the Ctcn for finally providing a seat for us at the table, and we sincerely appreciate this opportunity, and we look forward to making the most of it. I have a number of requests to be considered in the 4-year program of work. First, we the youths, we appreciate the efforts of Ctcn in promoting youth-led projects through the Innovation Lab, and we request that the Ctcn gives special consideration to youths without exposure. There are youths in developing countries who live in rural communities without access to education, the internet, and information in general. As such, when such opportunities, like for the Youth Innovation Lab, is announced online for application, these youths can't fill the application form because they do not understand English, cannot read, write, and have no access to the internet. We understand it will be very difficult for Ctcn to get such youths on board, even if the youths have been implementing amazing ideas at their local levels. Therefore, we request that the Ctcn works with grassroots youth-led organizations, empower these organizations with the necessary resources to go to grassroots communities and assist their colleagues in scaling their ideas. Secondly, we thank the Ctcn for the opportunity opportunity offered to young Go members to intern at the Ctcn Secretariat. We also want to inform you that most youths are passionate about going to the field to take part in the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of Ctcn projects in developing countries. However, most of these youths never meet the requirements with respect to the number of years of work experience. Most open positions require at least 5 years of experience in similar roles, not even traineeship. Such conditions make it difficult for youths to integrate within Ctcn. It is very important that you, our leaders, give us the opportunity to gain expertise, not only at the Secretariat, but also in the field, so that we can develop skills required to competently replace you when you retire. Therefore, we request that for any job opportunity advertised requiring technical expertise, we would appreciate it if you create a similar role for entry level. The senior experts should always work alongside junior experts in order to transfer skills and ensure continuity. Third, we express our gratitude to Ctcn for keeping aside budget for Yongo. This has enabled us have youth interns in the Ctcn Secretariat, and we also appreciate it if this budget is increased so we can also send interns to the field in developing countries where their expertise is needed. Fourth, Yongo has a lot of young people with technology background that are interested in becoming members of the Ctcn network in order to contribute their technical expertise in the network during consultations. We request that Ctcn admits youth-led organizations to the network and make the conditions for joining less stringent for youth-led organizations by overlooking their limited work experience and the number of years of existence of these youth-led organizations. To conclude, I would like to plead with you, our leaders, that you do not see us as Oliver Twist, who kept asking for more, but see us and treat us like your children. Because you love your children, you would offer them whatever they ask for, if it's geared towards building them to withstand future challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorine, the voice of the youth. And finally, we have Nicholas.
Okay, no pressure. No, thank you very much for the floor and for the previous remarks as well. Just a few reflections as I listened to the previous speakers on the programmatic, on the principle of having a common approach to the program of work. I also, wanted to answer to Pedro's concerns that basically this would mean moving away from a country's specific dimension. I don't think the idea here would be to make a clean sweep, but rather to take into account the experience of the Ctcn and of the tech by answering, probably even by building on the lessons learned, on the projects that probably would have been efficiently addressed in one region, actually, to as it is today, but probably in an even more better way by determining broad priorities, and then you need to perform a better action, probably to answer to a specific country. So I don't think it is incompatible with the approach that is ongoing right now, in my view, but I think probably to progress and be even more specific in addressing in an even better way to the country's specificities. On the methodology to move forward, I really appreciate what Erwin said as well, those two bodies of the tech and Ctcn have to continue to be addressed separately, of course, by their work, but indeed the joint task force should be also a third avenue to progress. I think now the methodology is one thing, and we should agree that as quickly as possible, because I think time is of essence. I think there's we should all be having as a target having delivered before COP. Otherwise, I think there's a risk as well for the whole technology mechanism, even for the Ctcn's action, for the tech's action. It will hamper the continuation of projects. It will certainly hamper the overall fundraising strategy, and I don't think it makes it very attractive as well for investors if there is a continued administrative process ongoing. So I think this should be addressed as quickly as possible. We should agree on the method and then get to work as quickly as possible. And one last remark, I think I liked a lot. I think the what you mentioned, Erwin, or this idea of living documents also takes off a little bit of pressure on delivering the perfect document itself. It makes all the better. It makes a lot of sense for these documents to be taking into account, of course, the evolution of the parties' recommendations, also new challenges that may occur for climate action. So this is, I think, the dimension we should keep in mind while going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we realize that, Matt, we cannot ignore you anyway. You must give your comment as a former chair of the Ctcn as well. And before even he does that, let us also remember that we want to optimize on the experience that is there to give the best output for this program of work that is also based on previous experience. So we should also be flexible to let that happen. But okay, Matt, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Omedi. Just a simple point, really, that going back many years in terms of the establishment of the technology mechanism, even before Paris, the main focus was on enriching the coherence and synergy in terms of the delivery of climate technology support. And while that coherence and synergy has been focused in terms of delivery, that coherence doesn't seem to have been in existence in terms of both reports of both arms. So having a joint work program is ultimately coming back to deliver on the mandate, in my sense, at least the mandate of what the parties are, the original genesis of what this technology mechanism was about, which is really about improving collaboration, improving synergy, and enhancing coherence.
Thank you so much. Now, with all that, maybe we can have the Secretariat respond briefly, but we must be willing to assist them as well so that we can move forward together. And thank you for all those very rich comments that we need to harmonize. Secretariat, welcome.
Thank you very much. Just to start by really saying thank you. This is exactly what we wanted out of this session, to present to you what we see as the process going forward, leading to the final outcome, which is the program of work. So this kind of input really helps us refine the process, but also how to structure the consultative process, the issues we should put to you for consideration. So just to say, we've really listened. We've all been taking notes feverishly across the board to make sure we capture everything. But just to the more specific question, I think that Mr. Ping, you raised on integration of the outcomes of the periodic assessment. That is very important. It is something we have on our radar. I want to confirm that we will definitely make sure that as soon as we get the first substantive draft report out of the UNFCCC Secretariat, we'll integrate that, but also even after we come out of COP, we will refine, I think, to the word that Aaron used that is very good. It's a living document, and so that will allow us to do that. So just to give you the assurance that we have that on our radar, and we'll make sure it happens. For the others, really, just to say, we are going to come back to this several times. We see it as an iterative process, but this session was important to allow us to begin to put together our thoughts on how to guide the process. And lastly, to our colleagues, the youth, to make the same commitment I made yesterday. I think you joined the advisory board at a very critical time, and as you said, I hope you will use the space very strategically to guide us on how we can better integrate that. I think the member states in it's not really the Secretariat you should be thanking. It's the member states in creating the space do recognize the value. And so we are really looking forward to working with you, with the Women and Gender Constituency and the IPO, so that the next program of work truly integrates the youth, the gender issues of endogenous knowledge and technology and indigenous peoples. So that's a commitment we can really make, that will be absolutely open and consultative in this process, and we look forward to working with you. So I think that's all I'll say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I think as AB members, we can agree that we want to give the Secretariat the leeway to proceed on and give us the best that they can out of this very important work plan, based on what we have given in and based on the experience that we are building on. And we have many other experienced colleagues, many of who have chaired Ctcn before, that can be consulted in the process. Thank you very much. And with that, I would now like to hand over back to Moa.
Thank you very much, Omedi. And colleagues, we will now turn to agenda item number 16. And today we have invited Ms. Katia Aguilar from Costa Rica's Climate Change Directorate to present a Ctcn technical assistance case study from Costa Rica. Ms. Aguilar, welcome to join this meeting, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation to share Costa Rican's experience. Thanks to all the UNFCCC, UNEP, Ctcn organizers of this 19th advisory board meeting. I'll share with you real quick the experience of Costa Rica. Please let me know if you can see the screen right now.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, Costa Rica conceives decarbonization and resilience as means to transform its development model to one based on social inclusion, the well-being of citizens, the circular economy, which is the experience that I'm going to share with you that we have with the Ctcn, technical assistance, the bioeconomy, the creative and cultural economy, and green growth. So I will make a brief introduction of the core instruments that we have on climate change that will be strengthened, or its actions will be strengthened with this technical assistance. Those are the decarbonization plan, which has 10 axes. The main axis that will be strengthened with this technical assistance will be the integrated waste management, industry commerce, low emissions on the industry sector, low carbon agri-food systems also is one of the one, and also the sustainable and low emission buildings. As a main progress on our decarbonization plan on circular economy, we have main actions on axis 6, which is low emissions industrial sector, where we have an officialization of a national bioeconomy strategy and its action plan. Also, we have an industry FIPCO, which is invest in research of containers of natural origin and compostable to replace plastic. Also, we have Flores that produces its resin containers 100% of its empty plastic containers, and development of life cycle analysis pilot in progress. For the integral waste management, we have 23 national technical standards for labeling our single-use plastics. For circular economy pilots, the pilot of the municipality of San Isidro Heredia, FIPCO framework, sustainability index, Flores eco plant of production with the eCoins model, and Holcim's model of change of supplies to reduce emissions. Also, Fortec and Reciclast work on the management and use of lithium batteries and agricultural plastic with a circular economy approach. We also have, of course, our NDC, where we have 13 thematic areas, and the main areas, as well as for the National Decarbonization Plan that will be strengthened, will be infrastructure and construction, industry, commerce and services, integral waste management, and agricultural. As we all know, sorry about that. Are you still seeing the full screen?
Yes.
Okay. As you may know, the work on local governments on circular economy will make them more resilient and will help the well-being of their population. So that is also included as a strengthening action of the Ctcn technical assistance. As an overview of the previous projects that we have with the Ctcn, I can mention the development of a protocol for planning, management, and implementation of the adaptation measures in the land use planning at the local level. That was in 2015. Also, you can not, if you don't have metrics or you cannot control the emission reduction. So we have developed a national system of metrics for climate change. Its name is CINAMEC, and we received your help on 2015. And this system has been growing on time with the support of other international cooperators. Ctcn also helped us in the design of a knowledge management system for the management of tropical forest and ecosystem services in 2017. Just to go straight to the Ctcn technical assistance in circular economy, we had this project which title is Towards the Circular Economy of Local Governments in Costa Rica. We have a pilot project in the into Rialba local government. Its main objective was to support local governments and other entities of the decentralized administration in incorporating the concept of the circular economy in their territorial and budget planning tools in order to contribute to achieving the goals expressed in our national determined contribution and the climate change policy. As deliverables and outcomes of these technical systems, we got this specific guide that you can access in this specific link that facilitates the incorporation of the circular economy concept in territorial planning and municipal budget programming frameworks. Also, well, as you may know, there was like a pilot project in the municipality of Turrialba in the area of municipal solid waste management in order to reduce the contribution of this specific sector to greenhouse gas emissions and improve the resilience of the inhabitants of the municipality. The project proposal guides the government actors to request resources from different funding sources. That was another guidance that we received from this specific project. As impact created with this technical system, we got the dissemination of the circular economy approach. There were 13 municipalities that were trained on this guidance, and they were provided with these guidelines on how to materialize their interest in moving towards a local circular economy in public administration and the social and business spheres. In Costa Rica, we have 92 local governments. So nowadays, we are actually training a lot more. I'm sorry about that. A lot more of local governments on this guidance. As a summary of the steps that we have in this guidance is, well, we have to make first a context analysis, then go to step 2, which is developing a local vision and establish the main goals. Then we have to identify the circular opportunities in each focus sector. And then with a prioritization, determine policy options to support circular economy opportunities of the prioritized sectors. And the last step is to have a roadmap. So this will be included in our local government's road planning. So since we start from the local planning, we also ask for help in the development of a national circular economy strategy to the Ctcn, which is now under development, because we have to reunite all the actors in one public policy instrument in order to have the local governments, the private sector working together towards this main goal. So as deliverables and outcomes of this technical assistance, we have the development of a work plan and related communication documents for this project, the mapping of existing actors and initiatives in circular economy, and planning and socialization and validation workshops, the preparation of this first draft for the strategy and the first indicators, because we have to start developing indicators. We have a few from processes that we already have under the waste management of different public and private sector organizations, the validation of the national circular economy strategies and indicators, and finally we have a dissemination and training strategy on this guideline and its interrelation to the main document that we are developing, that is the strategy. So we can have another 3 pilots. And well, the impacts created will be the increase of climate resilience and mitigation of the greenhouse gas emissions in the development of production processes, resource extraction, distribution, and promote changes towards more sustainable patterns of consumption in the Costa Rica population. To explain the impact in the words of our Vice Minister of Energy and Environment, Mr. Rolando Castro, he said Costa Rica will carry out, with the support of the Climate Technology Center and Network, a national circular economy strategy, which seeks to support the transition towards a circular economy in the country, and will have an integrated vision of the different public actors and private that allow a new way of producing, where the generation of waste is reduced and minimized, redesigned, reused, recycled, and revalued with the win-win perspective. The environment wins and the economy wins, and we all win. So, well, this action, as we know, the 2 historic achievements of 2015, which is the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, it will be a win-win situation for Costa Rica. So the reflections on the impact of this Ctcn support is that we help our accomplishment, because we will have like a public policy instrument as well as a specific tool for the local governments, which if they work with the infrastructure and construction sector, for example, it will be possible for Costa Rica to transform its infrastructure system to one resilient, sustainable, with high standards of efficiency and low emission processes, with the incorporation of nature-based solutions and with the actions on the circular economy. So that could be one of the results for this specific thematic area. As you may know, industry, commerce, and services in Costa Rica are working and making their best to implement circular economy in their organizations. So it will also help this specific INDC contribution, the 5.1, that says that in the year 2030, the thematic area of industry, trade, and services will have models, productive innovators from cradle to cradle, the life cycle analysis, or with a circular economy approach in main productive chains of agro-industry, services, construction, and creative and cultural economy, among others. So you can see over here that if we have this contribution that will help mitigation of greenhouse gas, we will also have impact on these sustainable development goals. To continue, well, this is an example of all the work that will be integrated within this specific strategy help. For example, the work of PIPCO and CEMEX that learn to share their truck fleet to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Nestlé that received plastic neutrality certification. Those are news from Costa Rica of the examples of circular economy actions. Unilever rewards an entrepreneur who produces fuel from plastic waste, for example. And a Costa Rican company, Mundo Red, stands out as a regional benchmark for the recycling. For the integrated with waste management, well, obviously, the waste management in Costa Rica is in charge of the local governments. Well, the leadership is under our Ministry of Health, but we all have like these kind of committees where we exchange experiences and try to work the integrated waste management agenda together. So we have a national determined contribution that in the first 2 years of the period of implementation of our NDC, Costa Rica will launch its public policy instrument for the promotion of the circular economy. So this is the main action that will be strengthened by these Ctcn technical assistance. Our contribution 7.2, that it's for agriculture sector, states that the country will promote a system of circular economy of agricultural farms, fully considering the process of biodigestion and recarbonization of the soil through the use of technologies to increase the levels of soil organic carbon, among others. So this is another of the actions that we think a clear guidance under this strategy will be strengthened. Well, the results, well, these are not expected results. These are the actual results. Sorry, because I have this word expected, because for example, for the cantonal pilot, we already increased the institutional capacity of the local governments for the effective integration of circular economy actions in the planning mechanism. We expect that with this strategy, there will be increased institutional capacity for the effective integration of the circular economy actions in the whole country. And well, this training on the guidance will help identify circular economy needs in the remaining local governments, which is the training that right now we are developing with the help of Aliarse, that it's a private-public alliance. Well, how do we involve the local actors in this transition? Well, we have an interinstitutional circular economy technical committee that which has the participation of the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Science and Technology, the Institute for Municipal Promotion and Advice, which is the IPAM, which is the one that is making the extra trainings on this specific guidance that Ctcn help us develop. The Commerce of Chambers, the Ministry of Economy, Industry and Commerce, or Trade, maybe that's the correct word. National Institute of Statistics and Census, INEC, and the ministry that I represent, which is the Ministry of Energy and Environment, where we have the Climate Change Directorate, where I belong, And we also have a quality management direction that also we have the energy secretariat and the planning secretariat for environment, which has the leadership of this whole committee. They have been working together with all these ministries and private sector in order to implement the different actions on circular economy. So as you may know, Costa Rica, within this specific committee, tried to articulate public policy that comes from different agendas of these specific ministries. For example, the quality management, the Quality Management Directorate has this decree that it's the National Policy for Sustainable Consumption and Production. The DIJECA, it's the one in charge or has the leadership of the follow-up of the implementation of these actions. Our Ministry of Health has in charge the law for integral waste management, that it's the 8839, and its Article 3 has an action plan for integral waste management, where you can get to see different actions, also on marine waste management and others that incorporate these circular economy concepts. Also, we have...
Yes, sorry to interrupt you, but would you please start rounding up the presentation? Thank you so much.
Okay, so the last one will be the National Economy Strategy that is under our Ministry of Technology. So as the following steps, we will like we will continue to propose guidelines for the establishment of systems for measuring and evaluating the impacts of actions in the circular economy on the national climate objectives. That is the multi-country assistance that is now under approval for the Ctcn for a regional support. We expect to have also a financing strategy, develop a strategy for financing all the circular economy actions at the subnational level. Since we are going to develop this specific system for measuring and evaluating, we have an MRB need or the creation of a mechanism for the monitoring and evaluation of those specific indicators that we will prioritize on this multi-country system and integrate them in our metric system or climate change metric system. Also, we need a lot of research and development on low carbon technologies. So as well, we know that with the circular economy, we have to develop, or we will be able to develop a lot of jobs that will leave no one behind and will let us have this sustainable restoration under a just transition. So those are the main remarks. If you have any question, I will be more than glad to answer them.
Thank you very much, Katja, for this excellent presentation. And it's always very interesting for us in the Ctcn Advisory Board to hear about concrete technical assistance projects in countries. So, colleagues, I would now like to open the floor for some brief comments or questions to Katja. So please raise your flag or indicate if you would like to take the floor. And I see Irvin Rose from the United States. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Ms. Aguilar-Martin. I'm very encouraged to see that the Ctcn is providing meaningful support to Costa Rica, a country that is so widely recognized as a leader on sustainability. And I just want to point out the different themes and areas that this assistance touches upon, and it's something of just a challenge for us to think about as we talk about what should the CTCN's focus areas or programs be, because we've talked about maybe circular economy should be a theme, and we've seen a lot of success in the CTCN work throughout Latin America. We talked about national innovation systems and institutional strengthening. We've focused some efforts on waste management, and this brings it all together, right? So we could say that let's focus on institutional strengthening, and I think that is one area in which the CTCN work can really have a transformative long-term impact, with relatively low cost compared to focusing on deploying specific technologies directly into the market. But in terms of local capacity building up the institutions that were engaged in this Costa Rica project, that's the kind of thing that really can have a multiplier effect, in stimulating the enabling environment and stimulating local innovation, but building the capacity, of the public sector to work with the private sector to create, effective markets and deployment. So I just wanted us to think about that. There are so many different ways to slice the apple. So, if we say we're agreeing on institutional strengthening as something the CTCN should focus on, that allows us to work on circular economy, that allows us to work on waste management, but it's just helpful to have a prism to think about, how the work is being directed. And I think, it's interesting that this was not called an institutional strengthening project is really my point. This is a circular economy project, yet the main results were not measurable in terms of improvements in waste management or greenhouse gas mitigation. The main results were in institutional strengthening. And that's not easy to quantify, but still that's very valid. Qualitatively, that's kind of transformative change, maybe more than limited sort of sectoral tweaks or certain technological deployments. So I'm very encouraged by this work. And again, I just want us to think about ways in which it all sort of can come together and how we frame our focus. And it's also nice to see work with such a local focus, sort of piloting the effort in a certain municipality, but then successfully scaling that up, throughout the country to some extent and supporting this regional effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ann Barr from Women and Genders constituency.
Thank you, Moa, and thank you very much, Mrs. Aguilar, for your presentation, which indeed was very interesting and provides a lot of insight on how the CTCN can support countries at different levels. I have a specific question, and that also brings us to how we can be guided by a transformative approach to our next program of work. The circular economy and waste management sector is a sector in Latin America where there is a lot of informal work conducted in many cases by women. I know this is the case, for example, in Colombia or in other countries. I wonder whether this would be the case in Costa Rica, and my question would be to you regarding if any gender analysis has been made in the frame of that project, and if there was any strategy, as you spoke about just transition and ensuring that this would bring new jobs, any strategy to ensure that the just transition would also have a gender dimension.
Thank you very much for that. And I will give back the floor to you, Katja, for some final remarks on that question, and if you have any other comments, and then we will move on to have a short break. But first, over to you, Katja.
Thank you. Well, our national decarbonization plan asks for us to report on gender advancements. So, for example, for our progress on issues such as conservation and forestry, we have national programs, which is more women, more nature, which is a strategy to mitigate the socioeconomic impacts generated by the global pandemic of COVID-19, as well as the gender action plan in the RED strategy. So those are examples of Costa Rica action in order to get more data on the women action in the waste management. Also for every training, and we are trying to get to know the quantity of women that are participating in Costa Rica as well, for the informal sector and also the formal one of waste management. We have a lot of women working on that. That's why we designed this specific national program. So everything that we develop within the planning, the local government planning, will have to include the gender vision. Or I don't know if I state that correct, if it or it's a specific focus. We try to integrate all about human rights, gender perspective, equality, and the empowerment of women and nature-based solution within all these climate agenda, and that will include as well what we will develop under the circular economy.
Okay, thank you very much again to you, Katia Aguilar, for joining us at the advisory board meeting today and for your excellent presentation. And thank you everyone for the meeting so far. We will now have a short 5-minute break, and we will continue the meeting at 3:15 Copenhagen time. So see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, colleagues. We want to proceed on with the agenda.
Colleagues, may we please ask you to have a seat and we will proceed with the meeting. Thank you so much.
Welcome back, colleagues. I now call your attention to agenda item 17. We have a guest. We have invited Mr. Benjamin Butcher from the multinational communication and information technology provider, NEC Corporation. Benjamin will share some case studies on digital technologies which can have a significant climate impact in developing countries and discuss how these can be implemented in partnership with the Ctcn. Mr. Butcher, welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I've just shared my screen, so I hope you can all see this. It's a pleasure to be talking to everyone and the members and the advisory board today. It's also a double pleasure because I made a mistake with summertime and I was just about to run my bath and jump in when they said you're starting in 5 minutes. So I'm glad to be here on time. Today, thank you very much for the introduction. I work for NEC. I'm based in Tokyo. I've been living here for about 25 years now, and of that time, 22 years has been within the NEC Corporation. We ourselves, since last year, we've been working and developing a partnership with the Ctcn and having some discussions with the group. And so what I'd like to present today is some of the, also, first of all, introduce my company, some of the things that we have and some of the things we're doing, but also then talk about some of the things that we're learning as we build this partnership. I have been told I have about 30 minutes, so I'll dash through the slides quite quickly, and then I hope we can sort of get into some discussion and open up some of the topics. So, but please stop me at any time or at the end, ask me any questions. Okay, so if my computer will move. Here we are. Okay, so NEC Corporation, for those of you who don't know it, we're a Japanese-based company, but we are a global company. We were set up in 1899, so we are over 120 years old. We started as a company, a telecoms company, importing telecoms communication equipment from America and bringing this to Japan. We now have over 100,000 employees. We work in 160 different countries and projects. We are very much, as a point I will make many times today, a technology-focused company. We invest in R&D, we build products and technologies, and then we go looking for problems which we can solve. So this is the global map. We have a footprint in most parts of the world, and we have either through our own companies or our group companies, or through partnerships. One of the things that my group within NEC, I'm based in the Global Relations Division, which was set up within NEC about 7 years ago now. What this was set up in particular was a changing attitude within NEC to try and organize the way that we generate social value. It had been each of the business units had their own strategies, were working independently, and not so efficiently. So within the Global Relations Division, we were set up to be a center for pulling the relations with multinational organizations and working to ensure that we are providing social value for and not just profit maximizing. So here are some of the examples of the projects we've done with some of the organizations that we've worked with. It's quite a wide range of technologies, quite a wide range of solutions, and quite a wide range of, for us, using the word products is maybe not quite right, but technologies. That means that it can be from an R&D level, such as at the moment with ICRC, we're working, one of the things I'm working, taking AI to look at landmines and help, which is taking it from the research level. Also talking about the ethics of using biometrics, through to complete projects like the IOM, the project using face recognition for border control, also developing fingerprints solutions for children from zero to 1 year, from 1 year to 5 years, and then applying it to different projects. So some of the solutions, and this is NEC we're famous for having. We talk about having every kind of solution from satellites through to submarine cables, and everything in between. But I'll just give us some examples. So one of the first projects that our group worked on was taking technology that we use for example, in some transport, using payment systems and things like this. We converted into an e-voucher system, and so we've been deploying this in projects in Africa where it can be used for distributing aid and also to redevelop agriculture and infrastructure. And this was something that, working with FAO and USAID, the first project here, we had the technology, but we didn't understand how it could be applied. And it was through engaging with discussions and the partners and the FAO that we learned how we could apply the technology. We were given a problem and we found a solution. And this is very different from the sort of solution that we typically work in with our enterprise customers. But ultimately, the technologies that we applied to this were fairly typical of the solutions that we can do. So this has been, and once we had a single solution, we learned how to do it, to develop the operations, the training, learned how to deploy this. This is something that's been replicated. Another one is energy solutions. So this came out of our telecoms business, where we are working with lithium batteries, solar panels to help telecom operators have a hybrid power system. So replacing their lead batteries and things like this. Now, this was started as a purely as a sort of enterprise, typical business opportunity that our African units were developing. It made sense financially. It was something that our customers were asking for. We had the technology to manage this. However, what we then have been able to grow this into, and this is working with our branches in Exxon, is taking this, working with partners such as Solarize in Africa, and to develop a much larger power plant system. For us, 1.3 megawatts, was expanding it up, So much larger than we would deploy for telecoms and carrier systems. And here we're using it to power a plastic recycling plant in South Africa. So again, this was driven by, this is purely driven by the same technology that we're applying in the telecoms world, then being applied to different situations. But because we're exposed to these situations, exposed to these problems, we're able to deliver them. One area that we are particularly looking at is, and we think it will be relevant to this, is the smart city. Now, the smart cities, or super cities as they're starting to be called now, are something that have been around for a long time. We, in particular, working with the EU system of FIWARE and bringing this to, we brought FIWARE to Japan when we're now applying this. Now, smart cities started as this dream of the future where you can have anything, all the data plugging into your large cities of the future. But what we're finding now is that increasingly this can be broken down into smaller deployments. For example, the FIWARE and this parts of the FIWARE structure is part of creating part of the solution that we're looking at for landmine. So you can use it on a small operational basis. It's open source. It's very flexible. But we do think that data in itself is one of the main driving powers of change. And if I can just give one example, we're working on a bus project in Singapore where they put this is many years ago, they put GPS on all the buses so that they could, and the government could then outsource and manage the bus operators better. And they created KPIs to say what the bus operators would have to perform to. Now, this would happen, this change happened, and it affected the bus companies and the government. But real change came when the newspapers and the media in Singapore realized that this information around the KPI was being published. This was available to everyone, and it was when they started to publish this, the citizens would say, well, you haven't hit your KPIs this year, and political pressure started to be put on. So the data management systems that started to be developed, along with this of making the data available, this was became quite a powerful force for change. And we think this is something that will happen at the city level, but now increasingly as we gather more and more data from many different ways, from transport, smart government, environment, tracking, energy, all of this, even and waste management, all of these will need to be collected and gathered together. And the smart city, which is quite a wide definition, can be defined in many ways. Is one way that we can bring all this data together. Now, I'll just dive into one small part of data collection in another way. Sorry, I forgot my slides. So the next slide is what we're heading to, the new catchphrase around this is digital twins, in which everything in the real world can also be captured in the virtual world and the digital world. Now, this is probably closer to what, when we talk about smart cities, you're talking very much about a technology, but digital twins is what we're doing. Now, this doesn't have to be something that's very advanced. Data is being collected everywhere. The more data we have, the more things we can see, the more things we can do. Now, this doesn't mean that it has to be Singapore or Tokyo. Data is being gathered everywhere in the world. Now, one area, for example, that we're doing this is monitoring microplastics. Microplastics is a very hot topic at the moment. Microplastics there's more than 10 million tons of plastic flowing into the ocean every year. We see very little of this. And every day you'll see articles about microplastics and the effect on the environment, the effect on humans. Last week, I think it was research was published saying that it's been found in human blood because it's getting everywhere. But we know very little about microplastics, the amount of data that we can gather. And until we can actually capture enough data and understand the problem, then we can't form policy, we can't form action. And even if we do take action, we can't see if that's being effective or not. So how do we do this? Now, at the moment here, you can see that this is typical of how it's done at the moment. It's dragging nets through the ocean at certain heights and defined speeds, measuring what's captured in the nets, and then counting by eye how this is done. So when we heard about this, and this is not just a NEC working with JAMS Tech, which is a Japanese research lab, we created an automated way of counting microplastics. Now, this is you take those samples. Now, it's only once this starts and we start to be able to gather data in this way that we can scale it up. And for example, start to plug this information and share this information with other organizations and make it scalable. If you want to be measuring the amount of microplastics in your waste, when you're in your waste plant, you need something that can automate this. So what I'm trying to show here is not so much that we have fantastic technologies for this, but more that until we have enough data, and often gathering that data is the largest problem, we cannot be moving towards solutions for these problems. So I'm just going to rush through the last 2 slides. Okay, the very last part of that is supercomputers. Now, NEC makes supercomputers, as I say, we need many, many things. So this is something climate. These are supercomputers that we supplied to the National Meteorological Service in Germany. Once you have your data, you have to decide what you want to do. The analyzing of the data, predictions, modeling, and all of these things. Now, closing that loop around the data is one of the things that we do. Now, I was just asked to say a few things about why we look to partner with the Ctcn. And for us as private entities, we see a lot of mutual value of working with Ctcn. One of the things is our purpose. NEC's purpose is something that in the last 5 years, we've sent something redefining and saying that we're not just a profit maximization company, but also we're there here to create social value. And NEC, like many Japanese companies at the moment, is going through a period of cultural change. And so this is not just a redefining our culture, this is just restating our culture and things that already existed. But as we do this, it becomes companies like NEC, we are reaching out and we're wanting to work not just by ourselves to create projects, single projects in South Africa to do recycling and to do solar panel. We want to be able to scale these projects up. One of the issues we face, and one of the things that we see Ctcn helping us solve, is that we are a technology company. We go technology first, and we look for problems that we can solve. And one of the things that has attracted us in all of the discussions so far with Ctcn is that the matching services you have, matching us with issues and problems and how we can put these together. How can we apply these technologies? What are the problems that we can be solving these that we don't see in our normal discussions? The other thing we have said is that our group is focused on working with many multinational organizations and talking about these. And the United Nations is a large part of that. Of those, Ctcn is one of the easiest to work with. They're very friendly, clearly defined ways of partnering and methods of working together has been very, very useful for us. And finally, yes, it's a bit of a joke, but it's the climate. Climate is one of the largest topics. It's recognized within our company. This is something going to be significant. It underpins all of our markets, all of our issues and all of our desires to create social value. So that's the area. Okay, I said I was asked to do about 10 minutes. I think I've gone well over that. But what I just wanted to present was my company, NEC, why the sort of area we're in. We are a technology company. We have many areas of this, and what the sort of areas we are looking for, and the expectations we have when we're working with Ctcn for partnerships. So I hope this was useful as a sort of presentation of where we are and what we're doing. I hope this will also, if you have any questions or discussions or comments, I'd gladly receive those now.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher. I can read your last bullet point. I wonder what that means. But I open the floor to everybody. Whoever has a comment or a question, welcome. What do you mean by that, anyway?
This is the last bullet point. It's the famous quote about it. Many years ago, it was said to be, "It's the economy, stupid." It wasn't Bill Clinton who coined the phrase. It was Bill Clinton who took the phrase and took it through the. It's just that now it is the climate. The climate is the number one issue that we face.
Very intelligent. Okay, we have Mohammed, and then after Mohammed, we have Christian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Donc, comme d'habitude, je voudrais parler en français toujours. Donc, je remercie d'abord l'intervention était très pertinente. Les peuples autochtones, en relation avec la Ctcn, s'inscrit dans la troisième mission de Ctcn, c'est-à-dire le renforcement des capacités en matière du changement climatique. J'attends, oui.
So Benjamin, I will provide some translation.
Thank you.
Thank you for the relevant presentation. The indigenous peoples, in relation together with the Ctcn, are preparing to embark on the third program of work to reinforce the capacities in relation to climate change.
Concernant les engagements des peuples autochtones, les engagements de la Ctcn envers les peuples autochtones, nous avons 4 points chauds. À travers la planète, les peuples autochtones vivent dans une situation vulnérable. Dans les peuples autochtones qui vivent près du pôle Nord, vivent les impacts de fondement des glaces. Deuxième point chaud des peuples autochtones, c'est le stress hydrique dans le Sahel, les pays du Sahel, du Sahara, en Afrique, vivent dans une situation précaire. Ils sont menacés de leur vie. OK?
Concerning the engagement of the indigenous people and that of the Ctcn vis-a-vis the indigenous people, we have 4 major issues of concern. On the one hand, indigenous people are living in vulnerable situations. For example, those living in the North Pole are witnessing melting ice caps. Second, the hydraulic stress, I'm not sure, hydric stress, yeah.
Hydric stress.
In the Sahel, in Africa, is putting populations in extremely precarious situations.
Troisième point chaud, c'est la région de l'Amazonie et la région des forêts africains. Nous vivons en tant que peuple autochtone dans ces régions de l'Amazonie, et la région de l'Amazonie est très importante pour l'humanité et pour notre planète. Et nous, en tant que responsables des peuples autochtones, nous pensons à faire des ponts entre les peuples autochtones de l'Afrique, centre-Afrique, les forêts denses de l'Afrique, Afrique centrale, et l'Amazonie. Donc c'est un projet très important pour changer les expériences et les savoirs traditionnels. OK? Je continue? OK. Le dernier point très chaud, c'est les peuples autochtones des îles insulaires. Les îles insulaires, les petites îles du Pacifique. Alors, ces peuples autochtones ont déjà les pieds dans l'eau. Ils vont être privés de leur savoir culturel, de leur culture, parce que chaque pierre, chaque coquille représente une valeur culturelle. Donc, voilà les 4 points chauds. Le dernier, c'est que la Ctcn doit agir rapidement sur la protection des savoirs traditionnels dans le cadre des renforcements des capacités. Merci beaucoup, merci de votre attention.
On the third hot issue, the Amazonian region and that of the African forests, the indigenous people living in these regions. And these regions are essential for humanity and for those populations and for our planet. Indigenous people are in these regions are trying to make bridges between these cultures. These bridges to exchange knowledge and experiences. On my last fourth point, indigenous people in isolated islands such as that of the Pacific, these people already have their feet in the water. They will be deprived of their knowledge, of their culture, which is slowly disappearing. And the last point I wish to make is that the Ctcn needs to act fast on the protection of the traditional knowledge through capacity building, amongst others.
Thank you, Mohammed. And now we come to Christian, and then we have Oli online. And I think I will close the list there. Christian.
Thank you, Amity. And thank you, Mr. Butcher, for the really interesting presentation that covered a lot of different things. I just want to touch upon the smart cities, or the I think you call them super cities and super citizens. We live in a high-tech world. I mean, look around this room. Everyone has thousands of euros of computers and phones in front of them. We're talking to you in Japan. We have all of our other people on the call from every different continent in the world. We really are leveraging technology. But I just want to refer back to a comment made by Tambi, our youth representative earlier, that there is a chasm growing between young people who are disadvantaged, who maybe don't have access to the latest technology. They might not have a smartphone. They might not have an email address. When we're designing these smart cities, when we're using this technology to count people and include them and develop and make life easier and better and faster, I just want to stress that we need to remember the less advantaged. We need to bring them along with us. So I guess my question is that, can we design systems that are more accessible, that the least advantaged among us can participate in? And even if they don't have the smartest phone, there needs to be openings, there needs to be portals where they can engage. And I just want to ask if NEC and our technology partners are keeping that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we come to Moa, and then we will give you an opportunity to respond. We come to Oli.
That's what I thought you meant. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that, Oli.
It's a long day. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak. First, I wanted to thank Mr. Butcher for this fascinating presentation, very informative, and it's a real treat for us to be able to hear directly from the private sector, get a glimpse into your world and what you look towards multilateral organizations for. I just have a couple of questions. The first is, what do you envision? So it seems like you may be at the beginning of conversations with the Ctcn about how you could engage. I'm curious about where you see your company's interest more. Is it delivering services on the project pipeline. So carrying out the contract work that is established with individual countries, or is there something else in mind that you have that I'm not aware of or can't think of? And the other question is whether you have any advice for us at the advisory board on how we can better engage private sector. What is it that specifically caught your attention? And basically what advice could you give us to reach out and engage more of your peers? Thank you.
Thank you, Oli, and sorry about that. And now, please respond, Benjamin. I think you're muted.
There we go. Okay, thank you for those questions. Such wide-ranging and deep questions that I could spend all day talking about. I will try and put them together, and partly I'll put them together. The first question about super cities and smart cities, and how we must make them accessible. So I will answer this in a couple of ways. And one of the things with smart cities, super cities is the new cool word for them, is that they are, a lot of hard lessons have been learned just building the systems. One of the things I think is just trying to get the smart city up and running is that we think we can do all these wonderful things, and you build something and then it's not necessary, or so they need to be flexible, they need to be robust. One of the other things is that they do run on data, and to have data, we need to be gathering this data. But to make them accessible, there is very much an issue around digital divide, people not having access to the services, the networks, although that is constantly improving. That will always be a problem and always be an issue. And it should be a matter of the design. But what can be done about that? Personally, I think a lot of this is to do with standardization. Organizations just making data available. But for example, if I can use an analogy, when we take a project if I want to deliver a project in Japan, we can call up a lot of engineers, we can move resources around. What we find, and this is partly answering the second question of Oli, when we deliver projects, for example, in South Africa, we have an office there, we can do many things. But a few years just before COVID, I was visiting the Ivory Coast, and we were looking at the project. We don't have a project office there. We had an interesting project we wanted to do, but we needed people. We could either be sending people from Japan, or we could be delivering things on the ground. But for that to be a sustainable project, we need to have people on the ground, and we need to be developing resources on the ground. So if we're taking a project like AI or smart cities or something like this, we talk about the technology, and that's what our company tends to do. But to make that actually run and actually work, we need people who can access these services, and that's a part of it. But also we need people who can run those services, develop their own applications. And a lot of that comes with education, training, which is why I think something like smart cities, having an open source technology is fantastic. That has been designed. But then you have to have people who can be using that technology and working. And a lot of that is, and maybe one of the things that can help with the engagement is the capacity building, because having telephones and mobile phones and computers is fine, but unless we're having applications that are built to use these, and having people who can actually gather the data and then use the data, this won't work. I'm squeezing a lot of things. I'm not exactly sure how much time I have, so I'm squeezing a lot of things together. But I hope that's partially answered the question. And if you'd like to contact me afterwards, I will. Or if you I have another 5 minutes, I will keep talking on the smart city side. But if I move to how can a Ctcn, what are our expectations? As our company, as I said, one of the main things is we are trying to learn about these issues. We don't have, we have a lot of technologies, we have a lot of knowledge about in certain markets, but we don't know have a truly global perspective to understand all of the issues. This was by learning by ourselves was not a very efficient way to do it. Working with the Ctcn, we are, and UNEP is another organisation that we're engaging with. We are learning a lot. We are understanding the larger implications of all these. So just having access to this is fantastic for us as a private company. But then we do. One of our expectations is to create social value, but the easiest way for us to do this is to start working on projects. So matching us with local companies, matching us with local governments, helping us identify areas where we can do value. This is something that we can be is of tremendous use to us, and where the conversations we've had with the Ctcn so far have been fantastic. Also, companies are, and I would say representing Japanese companies maybe quite risk adverse. So the first few projects, the first few times, anything that can be reducing that, be that partners, be that funding, be that market intelligence, understanding the problem, this can all help us. How am I doing for time? If you want to do a slashing of the throat and wind it up and move, I'll accept that. But that's my quick answer to these questions. If I have more time or there are more questions, I can continue talking.
Thank you very much, but I think you still have more questions, and I want to request colleagues that we will go slightly over time because of these questions, but I think it's for a worthy cause. So we have Maya, then we have Anne and Nicholas, kindly, in that order.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much, Benjamin, for the presentation. It was really very much interesting. I don't have a question directly to the presenter, but more like kind of question comment to the secretariats. Because during the Orly's, actually my first question was the one that Orly also asked. So it's really interesting how to kind of increase the engagement or the collaboration between the network members and the Ctcn. And you mentioned quite very interesting issue about the de-risking of the project implementation, because we all know that first part, like first risks and first losses are one of the most critical, and so on. So the value is very important here. Sorry. And my question would be, or the comments to the Secretariat, what we see is that it's very important to have to clearly and like strategically use the network members, because they are really diverse. They can really inform the Ctcn policies in a way to be really more productive or effective, because they know they are the ones who are executing the projects on the ground. So they know what are the details, where are the gaps and opportunities and so on. So I was just wondering if and how the network members and the knowledge and the information are used by the Ctcn Secretariat to really feed its policy developments or the policy updates. And maybe if it's not much like systematic in that way, to have kind of the network member round tables or something, you know, in order to really make it, how to say, make more systemic or make it like conceptually cooperative approach with the network members, in order that network members not to be only the executing entities, but really to inform the Ctcn with its work as well. So I was just wondering if this can be done or if it's maybe already done. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Okay, Anne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing for a bit more time, as indeed the conversation is important for the Ctcn. And thank you to the presenter for his really valuable input. I wanted to reflect on some of the comments that we've had from Mohamed and Christian. Indeed, as we consider partnerships with the private sectors, it's important that we not only look at how the projects and technologies we are going to develop are inclusive and bring everyone on board, but also to see how they respond to their needs and priorities, seeing that we are in a climate emergency. And when I hear Mohamed saying that one of his big intentions is to link peoples from two different continents that are holding knowledge about forests that are vital for humanity, I can see that digital solutions might be a very good way indeed to link them. And actually at the last COP, we did award, one of the projects was on women environmental defenders who are connected and linked through a digital application. So we see there are certainly digital technologies that can respond to the needs of the most vulnerable and the people. And my question to our presenter would be to know whether the company is ready to go that far, because that's a very big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, we come to Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. No, just a brief and wide reflection. I wanted to thank the speaker as well for giving us the company and private sector perspective. I think it's actually one, certainly among a few, and hopefully many other examples in the future. I think it's being new to the board and to the activities overall. I think this is clearly something that it's we've touched upon, I think, as well during the COP negotiations on the importance of widening in the end the range of sort of bringing more the private sector into the picture. I think this is really good, and I think from the analysis you just gave us as well in the action and the angle of these NEC activities, that we can see that there's of course a commercial and reputational perspective that the company certainly has, but it's good, and I think I also would support the comments made by a few other colleagues that that should not also completely that should also be aligned with the perspectives of continuing and acting towards the development and climate change itself, finding indeed acting towards the developing countries. So I think if companies such as yours can clearly show that there's a match between those two elements, this is actually clearly very, very good, and I can only encourage more companies to make it, or private sector representatives to make it to get closer to the Ctcn and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. I can see Matt is also here, so kindly.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Firstly, thank you very much, Benjamin, for the presentation. It's always great to hear the private sector. It's often a voice that's missing in the UN, even though I do believe that's changing. I have generally, I was very interested in your presentation, very interested in the diversity of the work, as you mentioned, from satellites to sea cables. One of the things that's really informing the technology choice in Europe at the moment is an EU taxonomy, which is focusing on environmentally sound technologies or do no harm technologies. I'm wondering, from your perspective, in terms of what type of decision-making criteria you have of whether you should proceed with a project or not. Do you consider sustainability within your decision-making at the very start? Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. So, Benjamin, you wanted more questions. There you are. Welcome. Kindly, you are still muted.
Yes, I'm starting to understand how tele marketing works. Thank you very much for everyone's nice comments. It's nice to be invited from the private sector to talk here, although representing the entire private sector is quite a responsibility. A lot of things. I'll take the last question about sustainability. Sustainability is something that we consider. We have within our company. We have methods and for deciding how to go ahead with a project, and that is a consideration that is made. We are private sector, so probably our criteria are slightly different from that of many of the organisations that are represented here. That does also then link me to one of the points I think that was made earlier about. Sorry, there was a lot of questions, so I'm just sort of trying to remember them. One of the things that links to the question that I got right at the beginning, and also was about how we can be represented and how we can bring sort of other people into this conversation. I did just want to say that NEC is not the biggest company, but we are quite a large company. And so when we look at projects, we do tend to look at things of a certain scale because we have an expense. One of the things that Mohammed was talking about, indigenous people, and then there was the comment about how connecting people through digital technologies. A lot of the technologies I presented are quite large, well-developed products and technologies. However, we are in the private sector. There's a lot of innovation that works at the grassroots level. People can just very quickly start creating software. You can just set up a competition with a very small amount of money to get people coming up with ideas about how to connect this and how to solve a problem. This is a very popular modern technique. It doesn't mean you're going to get a full, robust solution for connecting submarine cables, but it does mean you can create an application which would allow you to capture information about pollution, allow you to do information about, and it could be, and these technologies, these techniques for innovation at the sort of grassroots level of innovation, I think can be applied more to some of the problems that you're talking about, some of the issues of sort of how do you protect indigenous cultures and how do you engage with some of those. So small start was one of the points that I had to make. Smart citizens. Were there any other points that I had to address? There was a lot of welcome comments, but if I've missed something out, please let me know.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate. Personally, I had a lot that I will connect with you about later, and particularly on partnering with other digital companies, like we have Safaricom in Kenya, but that is beside. And now we almost are coming to the end. I want to thank all presenters, and I want to thank all participants. It has been very, very constructive for all of us. I want to hand over now to Moa to continue with the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Omedi. And we now have time for other matters. And we would first like to invite Sarah Trarup from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, who would like to share an update with the advisory board. So Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Moa, and for giving me the opportunity to speak to you, the advisory board. I'm Sarah Trarup from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, head of our Technology Transition and System Innovation unit, so recently established. I would like to take this opportunity to share with the advisory board that we at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center are in the initial stages of setting up a process for preparing a new series of global technology reports. The report series will be produced on an annual basis and made available for the COP. It will provide scientifically credible and policy-relevant assessments to inform the UNFCCC process and broader constituency about status, trends, gaps, and progress related to adaptation and mitigation technologies. And secondly, it aims to strengthen informed action on climate technologies. In this effort, we see the UNFCCC technology and mechanism as a key partner, and we would therefore like to invite the Ctcn and its advisory board to consider its involvement in such a report series, and perhaps consider to nominate an advisory board member as a representative to the steering committee of the report series. I also extended this invitation to the TEC last week, and I believe the invitation was received in a very positive manner. Finally, I would like to mention that we at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, you can also call us UNEP CCC, are also leading the development of the emission and adaptation gap reports, and that the technology report series would supplement and build upon experiences and approaches developed and used to prepare these high-level reports. I think there's no need for me to elaborate further on the impacts of these reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. And if some AB member would be interested to join this steering committee, please let us know or let the Secretariat know. And now we open the floor if AB members or observers would like to raise any other matters. So the floor is open. No, seeing no additional requests for the floor here, we suggest to turn to agenda item number 19, election of new chair and vice chair. And, oh, sorry, Fred had raised a hand. Sorry, Fred, you have the floor.
Sorry, I thought you were asking the observers. Teresa was waiting for the observers. Then I will talk. But since there are no observers raising issues, I just wanted to raise one issue. When you look at the discussion since we started with the joint activities through yesterday and today, you realize that there are so many tasks that are coming up, and they need time, they need devotion and commitment for them to be accomplished. Now, we have that arrangement that the meeting of the Ctcn Advisory Board should at least be twice in a year. Is there a possibility of having additional meetings of the advisory board, maybe back to back with the maybe other meetings to minimize the cost and so on, but to try and see how we can accomplish the enormous task that we've observed here during this meeting? Because to mention one of the few is that the issue of coming up with a joint work program is something that we really need to accomplish, and it is very important. So maybe we could give it more time to understand it, to discuss it, and then see how we can sort of come up with a draft as soon as possible. Then there are other issues that have come on board that need to be done. And if there's need for more time, is it possible to get another meeting? For example, back to back, maybe in Bonn, during the Bonn meeting, maybe before or after, 2-3 days for the advisory members, board members, to sit down and try to deliberate on these issues and see how far we can go. That is my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Fred. And I would like to give the floor to Rose, maybe if you have any comments on this regarding upcoming task force meetings ahead of the next AB meeting, which is planned for September this year. So Rose, please.
Thank you very much, Moa. So yes, Fred, you're right. In anticipation of the magnitude of work we have to undertake and deliver before the AB in September, but also for the COP, the plan is to have several task force meetings. The one that we've agreed upon, most importantly, is on the development of the work program. And the idea is that the advisory board will meet, sitting as a task force meeting for the program of work at least 2 to 3 times between now and September to review the work program and contribute to it. As we've said, the idea is not to simply present you a document, but for you to take ownership and really direct the process so that by the time we all receive the document in September, you will have participated. So yes, that is going to happen. But as the advisory board, you also reserve the right to call for other additional task force meetings. In the past, we've had task force meetings on resource mobilization, on engaging with the private sector and the network members. So I think that is something that we'll be happy to organize for the advisory board should we need more task force meetings other than the 3 we've agreed upon to support the development process for the program of work.
Thank you very much for that, Rose. And are there any additional comments or interventions under other matters? Anne, please.
Thank you, Moa. I just wanted to reiterate and commend actually the Secretariat for the work that is being done on the work program. As a part of this task force, I can say that there has been a very good and positive and constructive discussions, and that the work is being led really well. I also appreciate the fact that we have consultants that will conduct a participatory process. I think that is extremely important, and that many stakeholders will be consulted in the process. And in that sense, my impression is that the work is being conducted so that we can come to a good draft in September. And I think I didn't want to make any intervention earlier because we had a lot of them, but I do support what was said on the fact that we can be confident that we are working towards a good program of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Anne. And I don't see any other raised flags or hands at this point. So if you don't mind, we will now move to the next agenda item, number 19, the election of new chair and vice chair. And as per COP decisions related to the election of the chair and vice chair of the Ctcn Advisory Board, the Advisory Board shall elect annually a chair and a vice chair from among its government members for a term of 1 year each. And in practice, this means that only a vice chair needs to be elected annually, since the current vice chair shall be elected as the new chair after the current chair completes their term. And at the end of this meeting, the 1 year terms of the new chair and the new vice chair will start. And the position of chair is currently occupied by myself, and the vice chair position is occupied by Mr. Omedi Moses Jura from Kenya. And the vice chair shall begin the term as chair at the end of the 19th Advisory Board meeting until the end of the 21st meeting in 2023. So the Advisory Board should now elect a new vice chair from among Annex 1 parties. The new vice chair shall commence her or his term at the end of the 19th Advisory Board meeting. The election of a vice chair should take into consideration the member's remaining term in office, as well as the member's eligibility for re-election. And now, colleagues, we would like to open the floor for nominations of a new vice chair. So please raise your flag or raise your hand if you have a nomination. And I see a raised hand from Orly. Please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to open by thanking you, Moa and Omedi, for your amazing leadership over the past year. Not an easy time as we remain mostly virtual. So I'd like to thank you both as you served us very well in the past year, and Moa as you are exiting the leadership role, especially grateful for your intense support and leadership over the past 2 years in the vice and the chair roles. I would like to put forward Erwin Rose of the United States as to nominate for nomination for vice chair, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Orly, for those kind words and for this nomination. And I don't see any other requests for the floor. No other nominations. So we have one nomination for vice chair, and that is Mr. Erwin Rose from the United States. And unless there are any other nominations, we suggest to elect Mr. Rose as the new vice chair. And if you have any objections, please indicate in the chat or raise your hand or raise your flag. Seeing no objections, it's so decided. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Erwin to say a few words, and then to Omedi to say a few words as the new chair. So, Erwin, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Orly, for the nomination. Thanks to all of you for your confidence in supporting me to serve as vice chair. Congratulations and thank you, Moa and Omedi, for all of your leadership. I consider it an honor to be a member of the advisory board, and now an additional honor, but also a challenge to assume the position of vice chair. And I can just assure you that I will do my best to continue to build on the leadership that Omedi and Moa have provided, as well as their predecessors. It really is a privilege to get to know all of you and work together, and I will do my best to take advantage of this opportunity to serve as vice chair to help us all move forward together to further the progress we're making together through the Ctcn and in partnership with the tech. And I think we are clearly accomplishing a lot together. There's a lot more that, of course, needs to be done on an urgent basis, and I continue to believe that the Ctcn, while achieving a lot, has not lived up to its full potential. And I think together we can continue to move forwards to further accelerate climate action through the Ctcn. So it's going to be a challenging year, but this is a particularly important year as we work together on the program of work, setting the agenda for the next 5 years. So I'm counting on all of you to chip in and put in as much time and effort as possible between the meetings so that we can come back together in September with a very high level of consensus on the way to move forward. And I'm happy to stay in touch with all of you in between the meetings as well. Thank you.
I think we should clap for him. Thank you very much for accepting the responsibility. And thank you, Moa, for calling upon me to say something. But before that, it is you to say something. And I welcome you now.
Okay, thank you very much, Omedi. And just a big thank you to all of you from my side. Thank you to all great colleagues in the advisory board, and again, welcome to all the new members. And thank you to Rose, Karina, Clarin, and all other colleagues at the Ctcn Secretariat for all your fantastic work and great support. And thank you also to Ping and to Omedi for our great collaboration in co-chairing. I have learned a lot from you. And also I would like to thank Orly and Maya as our previous chairs for your great work and your support. And all the best to Omedi as our new chair and Erwin as our new vice chair. And I'm looking forward to our continued collaboration. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Orly, for accepting to say something before me. And as my chair, you taught me so much. I remember when I took over as vice chair, and I said, yes, I will work, and I was feeling I was really safe in your hands, and I was, because it has gone so well. I worked so well and learned so much from you, and it has been a wonderful time even for the Ctcn, because although we had challenges, because of your nature, it worked so well for me. That much I must say, and I think everybody knows. So thank you, and we wish you well. I know you are still with us, and we will still need you so much. So I am very emotional about this, because it has been really challenging, and sometimes it was difficult because of the virtual meetings, and the Secretariat knows this, and sometimes we had to hold it in style, and everybody was flexible. So thank you. I look forward to working closely with Erin as well. And what I have learned over the time is that it's good to accommodate everybody, and also to be flexible, and to learn from others, and also to contribute what we can to make things better. And I know that will be the spirit in which we will work. And I can see around the room people who have been chairs here. One of them is looking right at me, and a good friend of mine, Matt. These people are very supportive. And I think we will never ignore the experience that you people have, the foundation that you laid for us, and we hold you so dearly. Please be with us in the work together. And let's remember that what we are doing is benefiting quite a number of people. And out there are people still expecting so much from us. Please help us to help them so that they can have a better life. And some of them have seen it and appreciated it. And I must talk on their behalf as well. From a developing country, sometimes it's very difficult to pick up something immediately. And you only realize when it is late that, oh, I should have done this. So be patient with these people as we work together. And let us help them together. Some of you have been to these countries, you've seen. I know Matt has been, and we talk a lot about it many times. They also deserve our services. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much to the Secretariat. Really appreciate what you do. Before I finally say goodbye, I want to call upon Rose. Kindly say something.
Thank you very much, Omedi. I want to start by addressing Moa and to say that on my behalf and on behalf of my colleagues at the Secretariat, we are really very grateful for your leadership. We are extremely grateful because you are leading us in the middle of a pandemic. And we called on you more times than we should probably have to seek your guidance and leadership. And you're always graceful and calm and willing to take the time. So I want you to know that we've been very grateful for that. We are also grateful because you're leading us in a transition time when we're having the independent review. A COP that was postponed, so we actually had to produce 2 reports. We never lost to the schedule, so we were actually able at COP26 to successfully deliver 2 reports that were discussed at the COP, and that's probably one of the reasons we had one of the highest number of tech decisions. To make the point that we stayed on track, we stayed guided and motivated, because as the Secretariat, you're our daily interface as the chairs, making sure we remain grounded in the decisions that are made by the member states and that reflect the collective guidance we get from the advisory board. So I want you to know that we are very grateful. And we thank you so much for the grace and calmness and kindness with which you deliver that support. And we look forward to your continued engagement as a member, and we wish you very, very well. And just to welcome my new chairs and vice chair, we are really very grateful. For us, for such a time as this, we can't imagine having anybody better. So we are very grateful to the AB members for the choices and the decisions you've made. In terms of the chair and co-chair, we really look forward to a great future, at least for the next 5 years as we go through this transit period. So we thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for that, Rose and Omedi and Erwin and everyone. I'm very glad to hear this. And colleagues, before we close this meeting, we have a few more agenda items. We have the date and the venue of the next meeting, and then we also have an announcement from Clarin. But let's start with the date and venue for next meeting. So we would like to suggest organizing the next advisory board meeting in September, following the Tech 25 meeting, which is taking place from September 5th to September 8th. And therefore we propose that the joint Tech and Ctcn session would take place on Friday, September 9th, and followed by Ctcn's 20th advisory board meeting from Monday the 12th to Wednesday, the 14th of September. And to enable a joint physical meeting together with the tech meeting, we propose to organize this advisory board meeting in Bonn, Germany. So this is our suggestion, and we would like to open the floor if there are comments on this suggestion. So please raise your flag or raise your hand if you would like to make a comment. I don't see any flags or raised hands, so we take that as a support for this suggestion, and we will then plan on this basis to have the meeting in mid-September in Bonn. Thank you so much for that. And now we have an announcement from Clarin.
Just a brief message, if those online could stay online for a nice family photo. And if I could ask you to put on your camera, that would be great. For all those in the room, please don't leave and kindly come under this big screen so we can together take a hybrid photo, if possible.
And with this, the 19th Advisory Board meeting is hereby closed. Thank you everyone so much for joining us online and here in person in Copenhagen. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.